All right, so again, welcome to our afternoon Zoom on the rare sand dunes of the Inland Empire. You're going to see me looking off screen this way a lot because I have two screens up and the second is my presentation screen. But I have right here, my name is Michael Viramontes. I'm a land steward for Rivers and Lands Conservancy. And my email is here. We're going to post it in the chat at the end as well. If you want to ask any follow-up questions, I also plan to send up a follow-up email with some links after the presentation. And we also plan to post this presentation on either Facebook or YouTube or something as it's being recorded. I also wanted to give a shout out to Inland Empire Resource Conservation District and Edison International. They are grant supporters for us, and they're supporting this presentation right now. All right, so before we get into the main topic of the presentation, I'm going to just kind of cover what we do as an organization. And so we are Rivers and Lands Conservancy, and our tagline here is caretakers of Southern California's natural, wild, and open spaces. So in general, we are a nonprofit land trust. And so we were formed in 1989 as Riverside Land Conservancy. We had a name change just a couple years ago, but we're a nonprofit land trust. We care for open space lands. We've conserved over 14,500 acres, or we've been instrumental in conserving those acres. But we currently hold and manage 2,600 acres. So if you're wondering what happened with those other, 12,000 or so acres, basically we helped conserve lands that were conveyed to like regional county parks, state parks, other entities like that. And so we usually give this presentation a lot to high schools. And so we have a little thing on the bottom of the slide there that says our staff have educational backgrounds in forestry, biology, environmental science, and even creative writing. We usually we're saying that because we want to inform our high school students we talk to about the different backgrounds that we have and what different routes of education they can take if they want to work at an organization like ours. All right, so what is the land trust? So we're a charitable organization that acquires land or conservation easements, and we steward those lands, so we take care of those properties. And we're coming up on a map here that shows all the different conservation properties that we have throughout Southern California. So you can see in the top left of that map is Riverside, where we are based. And that whole region, there's a lot of different conservation properties we have there, and there's even some we have down in the bottom right corner of the map that are kind of near El Centro, Imperial, and those are kind of our outlier properties that we have for burrowing owl conservation. And you can see there's a different colors for each of these properties, some being mitigation, so those are for conservation easements. Some of them being conservation transfer properties, meaning we acquired these properties and then we not forwarded them, we like passed them on to other conservation entities. And then the purple open space properties are basically ones that we own in fee title. So we own these properties that are there for conservation. So that was just a general background on our organization, what we do. Let us know if you have any questions. Feel free to use the chat box, and we will start moving into. Does anyone have any questions real quick or no? Any general questions? No. All right, then if no one has any questions, we will go into our main presentation here. And so that's about the rare sand dunes of the Inland Empire. And those rare sand dunes we're talking about are the Delhi Sand Dunes Formation, which is a rare habitat type. And I'm going to go ahead and I think this next slide is okay. So these sand dunes are known more locally as the Delhi Sand Dunes. Some people call them the Colton Dunes. Some people call them Pepper Dunes or the Sand Hills. I kind of did like a a dive on some Facebook groups I kind of put out there, asking people if they had any old pictures they wanted to share of this rare habitat type in the Colton, Fontana, Rialto area. And a lot of people didn't really know what I was talking about. Some people were just like, what are the Delhi sand dunes? And a lot of people were saying, oh, are you talking about the sand hills? Are you talking about pepper dunes? And some people submitted these photos to me. So the locals know them as different terms. And they had some interesting stories they told me about back in the day. A lot of them talked about ditching high school and hanging out in the dunes and riding off-road vehicles or ditching class to go party and stuff like that. So it's an interesting just background there. But what are the Delhi sand dunes? Actually, before I get into this, I want to swap my screen over to show you kind of where I'm talking about here. So Rebecca, can you see this all right now? All right, cool. All right, you're muted again, but I can see your face. But all right, so by the way, Rebecca is my coworker, and she's helping me with this presentation. So I know there's a lot of you there, but I'm gonna ask Rebecca if she can see my screen every so often. But right here, I just want to show you all, this is kind of a map that shows what I'm talking about. And so the Delhi sand dunes are this rare habitat type that are made of this, that require this Delhi sand, so a special soil type. And so this yellow you see on this map I made is the outline of where this Delhi soil, this Delhi sand exists. And so you can see that it covers, here's Ontario, here's Chino, here's Fontana here, this is South Fontana, this is like Colton and Rialto over here. Then you can see that the sand actually does appear, let's see, in Riverside in some areas as well. But a majority of it is over here and north of the Santa Ana River. And so if you take all this yellow area, this Delhi sand area, and you kind of take a total acreage of it, or total square miles is about 40 square miles. So this big chunk right here is about 33 square miles, and the rest of it is about 7 square miles. And so it's a fairly large area where this the specific sand exists, and where these dunes exist or existed. You can see if you zoom in close enough, a lot of area where the sand exists is now covered with different development and stuff like that. So let me zoom out here again. Sorry, it's loading a little slow on my screen. All right, so you can also see, if we zoom in here, there's different colored polygons. And so these red ones are properties conserved by Rivers and Lands Conservancy currently. So I'm just going to zoom in here because this is the highest concentration of property. So these red areas are conserved by RLC. The blue areas are conserved by other entities that are not RLC. So for example, right here, this area actually is conserved by Vulcan Materials. It's the Colton Dunes Conservation Bank. And the portion in red here is still owned by Vulcan. However, RLC is responsible for managing this portion or monitoring this portion. And then there's areas up here, like you see this purple part. And this purple polygon is the area that is slated to be conserved. So RLC plans to hold this area in conservation in the future. And so I'm going to go back to presentation slides here. All right, so what is this Delhi sand I've been talking about on this map? It's basically a fine grained sand. It's if you ever experience it, it's super fine grain. It gets everywhere when you touch it. It's ruined one of my cameras. I dropped it in the sand, got all on my camera, and it just ruined it because the fine grained sand just gets everywhere. And so how did it get here? Basically, the Santa Ana winds blowing over the San Bernardino Mountains, like the Cone Pass, blows down this this fine grained sand because it's so small and fine. It's easy to blow, and then it landed in this specific area. And so then it creates dunes. Like a lot of you, I'm sure you know what dunes are and how they're made. They're just wind blown hills of sand. And these dunes specifically are low. They don't, just the quality of the soil, it doesn't allow it to become very like large, high hills. They're pretty small hills. Someone asked, one of the questions someone asked was about how it compares to Glamis and just the difference in sand type. Even though they're both granite-based soils, the difference in soil type allows the Delhi or the sand dunes in Glamis to grow a lot higher than the ones that we have in the Delhi sand dunes. And so we just showed you that map. I might go back to it to show you some other things later. I'm lagging, I'm stuck on the screen here. All right, so why is this habitat important? In general, sand dune habitats, because they're so far and few in between, they're generally biodiversity hotspots. They're very specific, not easy to live in habitat types. And so that just leads to speciation, to isolation of species. So if there's certain species that only live in sand dunes, you can imagine they're not going to be able to really escape to different areas. They're going to be really confined to that area. And so their pool of mating with each other is going to be really small, and they're going to allow for or push for more speciation. So there's a lot of different species in these areas that are insect species that entomologists believe are kind of their own species and need to be studied more. And so it's also kind of diverse because you have these areas that are super disturbed by the wind. So there's not a lot of cover. There's a lot of loose sand. There's some little stabilized areas. So it's kind of very dynamic within its own habitat to have these like shrub patches, these open areas. So there's a lot of different types of microhabitats within this type of environment. Oh yeah, sorry, I missed a spot. And then, so it's also, it's the rare habitat type that's only found here in the Inland Empire. And so you can imagine if there was originally 40 square miles, there's actually only about 2% of that original 40 square miles left as this rare habitat. So there's just not a lot of it left. And that makes it important to conserve those last 2% of habitat. And so a lot of people, when we talk about this, a lot of people are think like, why haven't I seen this? Like, I don't remember seeing any dunes here in my community in Colton, Rialto, and Fontana. And so a lot of it is developed over, like I had said previously. And like I said, there's only about 2% of the habitat left. 1.64 is currently conserved with about 415 acres. And a lot of it is low quality. It's kind of flattened. It's not rolling sand dunes like it should be. It's just been really disturbed by past uses like agricultural uses. Yeah, and a lot of it is surrounded by development. So like in this picture here, on the left side, you can see the street is that's Riverside Avenue. So if you go driving up Riverside Avenue to your, if you're going northbound on Riverside Avenue to your right, there's one of the largest areas of Delhi sand dunes left in existence. However, there's a lot of different development that kind of just blocks your view, so you can't really see it anymore. So it's behind those the Kinder Morgan gas plants and stuff like that. So a lot of it's kind of just obstructed in view. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what lives in the dunes. Scroll here. All right, mine's, uh-oh. There we go. Sorry, my presentation's lagging a little bit. Here we go. All right, so this is a kind of a design for a sticker that we had made for our outreach. And I just wanted to point out some of the different iconic plants that live here in the dunes. And so the one on the right here is telegraph weed. It's a very important plant in the dunes. Buckwheat, one of the most important kind of indicators of this dune environment, is here on the left. And you can see in this picture that our staff member Rachel took, you can see a variation of the fresh flowers that kind of peak bloom in the summertime. You can see some old faded flowers on there. So I like to picture how it shows the different stages of the flowers development. And then on the top left, you can see this deerweed, which is another common plant in the dunes. And then the next slide, once it loads, shows some more plants here. So here's another, the first one on there, desert croton. That's one of the most common plants you'll find there in the dunes. It's not the biggest looker, but it's one of my favorites for sure. I think they smell really good. And then we've also found some truncated lupin, yellow pincushion, sapphire woolly star is really pretty. Thurber's buckwheat, it's a really small form variation of buckwheat. It's really pretty. It has these small little bright pink flowers. Some evening primrose, valley vinegar weed, which is really cool. And this last one on the list here is called Pringle's Monardella. Right here you see a flattened herbarium pressing because this is actually a plant that's thought to be extinct, and I'm going to talk a little more about that one. And so the Pringle's Monardella, it's a CMPS rare plant rank, has a CMPS rare plant rank of 1A. It's presumed to be extinct. It is endemic to the sand dune, so it only lives in this sand dune environment. However, it hasn't been seen since 1945. The last herbarium collection, the last species collected for the herbarium was in 1941. It grows about 4 inches to a foot tall, and it has these like bright purple flowers, grayish to green stem leaves. It's really unique looking, and there's not really anything else in the dunes that would look like it. So I think it'd be really easy to find if we did find it growing somewhere again. But I've never seen it out there. And we were contacted recently by the director of CMPS wanting to do a search, but that was last fall. I think he contacted us about it. And then all this COVID stuff happened, so it didn't happen this year. Hopefully it'll happen in the near future, because it'd be neat to get out there and try to find it, send a rare plant hunt out there. But I also wanted to share this little picture here. I found it on one of the herbarium slides. I kind of had to try to translate it because it's very difficult to read that cursive there. But it was a note. I don't know who left the note, but it says Pringlei, collected by someone at Colton in 1881 or 82. We took it for Monardella breweri, a different species. And the person said this, I knew just where it ought to grow, and I don't know why I cannot find it. So it was someone that had gone back, a collector that had gone back to try to find it where it was growing, and they couldn't find it anymore. And I just thought it was kind of a sad note. I hope that the species isn't quite extinct yet and that we can find it again and maybe revive its population, but I'm not sure that'll happen. All right, let's see if I can scroll the next slide here. All right, so what else lives in the dunes? As far as wildlife, there's a lot of different rabbits out there. So there's cottontail rabbits, there's jackrabbits, coyotes, of course, Los Angeles pocket mouse, and a lot of different birds out there, like red-tailed hawks. But then here's some pictures that some staff have taken out there: the zebra-crowned sparrow, the western meadowlark, and then burrowing owl is an awesome one that we've found out there, and we want to restore the habitat more to help them live there. But we also want to talk about the insects that live out there, and this insect in particular is called the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly. And this species is actually the first fly added to an endangered species list. And it's basically the reason that 2% of these dunes are still conserved and they're not haven't been developed on, because it's an endangered species on an endangered species list. The place where it lives earns legal protection, and so luckily this species has been used to conserve these dunes. All right, so what does this fly look like? Here's a good overview picture. So the fly is about 1 inch long. It has this orange brownish color to it. It looks kind of like it's a honeybee mimic. Has these brown and black striping on right on its back. The eyes, you'll see in different pictures of it. Sometimes they look reddish, sometimes they look brown, sometimes they look green. Depends on how the light hits them, I believe. That's what gives them the different colors. And then they say that it's a strong, fast flapper, and so it can fly and kind of have a stationary flight like a hummingbird moth does, or a hummingbird does. And experts often describe the flight as clumsy, just because the flight path it takes is kind of interesting, just the way it kind of like bobs around. I'll say that I've seen one, or I've seen like 2 of them once before, and it didn't look like anything else that I've ever seen fly around out there. It's just like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just interesting, the way they fly is just different. All right, so why is it called flower loving? So it loves flowers, so we think. So it's in it's in a family of flies called Mytidae, and these are the giant flower-loving flies. Most flies that are in this family are flower-loving, and that they're pollinators, and they nectar on different flowers. However, scientists that study the species still need to study it more and observe it more. They have never actually seen this species pollinate nectar on any different flowers. So we're not sure if it is similar to its fellow giant flower-loving flies in this way. They do have some hypotheses about why they haven't seen it nectar on anything. Some believe that it might be that the flower that it did pollinate is extinct. And some believe that maybe they just get all the nutrition they need in their larval state, and maybe as adults they don't need to nectar on anything. They just are looking for a mate, and that's it. But we do know that they like to perch on buckwheat flowers, waiting for, or the females like to perch on buckwheat flowers as they're waiting for a mate to find them. So it's possible they do transfer pollen that way as well. And a lot of people wonder, why haven't I seen one of these flies? Well, these flies only live in this rare habitat type. They need this special soil to survive. But also they only come out in the brief, the hottest months of the year. So in the summertime is when they come out, and they only are alive as adults for that short period. And they only are active in the hottest part of the day. So unless you're out in the Delhi sand dunes, a specific habitat type in the specific area of California, and you're out there in the hottest couple hours of the day, then you're probably not going to see one, which is sad, I guess. And also a lot of these areas where they do exist are conserved by us. We limit the amount of we limit people's ability to get out there because of the restrictions that we have on this endangered species. And then the slide here, I just want to show these pictures on the left is the female fly ovipositing, or laying her eggs beneath the soil. So you can kind of see the back end there. It kind of telescopes, so it kind of extends. And then the back end, the ovipositor, kind of just goes under the soil and can lay it like, I forgot, I think it's like 2 to 3 centimeters under the soil surface. And so once larvae are in the soil, they can burrow up to 10 feet below the surface, as far as we know. I mean, I don't know if maybe they can go deeper or not, but we do know that they can go up to 10 feet below the surface. All right, so just how endangered is this fly, the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly? So it was added to the endangered species list in 1993. It was the first fly on the list until 2006, and then 11 different species of fruit flies from Hawaii were added on the list. And just an interesting fact about these flies in Hawaii is, I guess, each of these fruit flies has their own plant and fruit off of these plants that it survives on, and that's why they're so endangered, is like they have this small population of tree species that I guess are forming new species on these new smaller islands that are being created. So that's why they're so endangered. They just have these small area of food they can eat, which is interesting. But anyways, back to the Delhi sandfly. The current population is kind of hard to gauge because it's hard to know how many larvae are living under the soil. And to do an actual full protocol survey costs a lot of money. So it's hard to do full protocol surveys on all the existing Delhi sand dune lands that are left. But we do know out of a 40 square mile area, only 2% of that original sand dune habitat is left. And so you can imagine if your home got shrunk by 98%, then you only had 2% of your land to live on, then you'd probably be pretty endangered as well. All right, so this burrowing owl I want to talk a little bit more about as well. It's a California Department of Fish and Wildlife species of concern. It's another species that lives out here that could use some protecting as well. So we actually do hope to restore more of our habitat to have both of these species here. And a lot of people always ask, well, isn't the owl going to eat the fly? And I say, I hope that there's enough of both where they don't just decimate the population. But yeah, we do want to help out both. And yeah, I mean, I hope they don't eat all the flies, but we'll see. But yeah, so these, if you've never seen burrowing owls, they're really cute little owls. They're called burrowing owls because they live in burrows. They live in the ground, usually in holes made by fossorial mammals or ground-dwelling mammals, usually squirrels. And in our habitats, I'm not sure. I don't see a lot of squirrels, so I'm wondering which burrows they're living in. I think that there's definitely coyote burrows that they could live in out there. But they require large open habitats with sparse, low-growing vegetation. And so the Delhi sand dunes are just a perfect area for them to live. We've spotted them there before. Just unfortunately, there's a lot of invasive species, a lot of invasive weeds out there that as soon as they start growing up, like in this picture here, there's mustard behind them. As soon as that grows too high, they kind of just leave that habitat area, which is unfortunate. So we're trying to work on restoring them so those invasive species don't grow out and scare them away. So, but they eat insects, again, hopefully not endangered flies, small rodents and lizards. And so how many owls are in the dunes? Currently, there's not many. We're trying to restore the dunes, like I said, so that visiting owls will come back and begin to stay there or begin to come back season after season. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll here. So a lot of areas, so like this picture here, a lot of these dune areas are just inundated with invasive weeds. Like right here, there's a lot of mustard growing. There's a lot of invasive grasses that occur. Stinknet, Russian thistle or tumbleweed. Those are just some of the worst invasive species that we have growing on these areas. And then there's areas like this that are pretty good habitat. They have the nice sparse low growing vegetation that they need. There's a lot of wide open space here, but there's a lot of raptor perches, like up in the upper left, you see some telephone poles, the black fencing on the left. Next to the housing on the right, there's some fencing. And so there's just a lot of areas where raptors can perch, which burrowing owls don't like very much because other raptor species like hawks will eat them. So it's not their favorite thing to have around their houses. And so this area here, the Colton Dunes core, this kind of, I'm gonna open my map again so I can show you better. Zoom in here. All right, so this this area kind of along Riverside Avenue, south of the 10 freeway. This area here is kind of the best area where we think they might be able to live at the Vulcan Conservation Bank right here. And we have our newly acquired Baruchin property. And then there's this Kinder Morgan conservation easement. It's basically the biggest area left, the biggest continuous area of Delhi sand dune left, where if we can control the weeds, then I think it'll be a good home for burrowing owl to stay. It's kind of got everything they need. There's some raptor perches. There's like electrical poles. There's some fencing, but in general, I think it's the best habitat. And there has been one this past season that's been living there. I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but hopefully it'll come back and tell its friends. All right, I'm going to switch back over to the presentation. Oh, there it is again. Again, that's about 280 acres of open space. Again, hopefully it's a good place. Oh, here's the picture of that burrowing owl there. And here's just some imagery showing you what it looks like from the ground level. So the top picture is Baruchin Preserve. The left one here is the Kinder Morgan Conservation Easement. And the one on the right is the Vulcan Colton Dunes Conservation Bank. It's kind of, as long as the weeds, like I said, as long as the weeds are controlled, I think it'd be perfect habitat for this burrowing owl. And so what different issues do these dunes face besides the things I already kind of talked about? Sorry, it's frozen here again. All right, so we have a lot of trash, illegal dumping going on a lot of these properties that we have to deal with. A lot of vehicle trespass. Erosional issues. Again, this is sand, very loose sand that as soon as you start throwing water into it, it just starts eroding very easily. Invasive species, that picture again. Come on. All right, looks like I'm stuck here. All right, here we go. Some vandalism issues, a lot of people stealing fencing and gates. Historical land use. So you can see here the outline of one of our conserved properties, and you can see this picture from, I think it was the 30s. So on the left, you see all those little black dots are basically trees. So this was an orange orchard, orange grove, or a citrus grove. And you can see today it's Delhi sand dune habitat. It's strange, you go out there and you don't see any remnants of this agriculture besides the conversion of the habitat to a very weedy habitat. But yeah, so a lot of these areas that we're trying to conserve, we're trying to restore, have the negative impacts of this agricultural use that used to be on it. And there's a lack of sand recharge and transport. So these dunes that were formed by the sand blowing off the San Bernardino mountains, unfortunately, a lot of this sand isn't able to make it continue being transported to these areas. If you can imagine, the sand used to be able to freely blow to these areas, and then if you put a bunch of development in between, some taller buildings, some trees, windbreaks, eucalyptus trees, it's going to disturb that flow of sand transport. And so there's going to be less sand landing on top, and there's going to be less wind able to blow the existing sand in those sand dunes over, and that same disturbance is going to be there. And so it's going to allow for a little more invasive species to grow on that undisturbed habitat. It's a little too stabilized. And so we have to figure out how to deal with that issue as well. So here's just some more slides showing what we're doing to address these issues. Again, if I can get it to change slides here. All right, so property management and monitoring. So of course, we monitor the properties we conserve, and we clean up any trash that is at these properties. We try to address all these issues that may be related to like neighboring landowner use. We try to collaborate and coordinate with those neighboring landowners. Yeah, so we currently manage about 275 acres of this rare habitat type. And eventually, pending additional property acquisitions, our total acreage of this habitat will increase to 370 acres of this rare habitat type. And so we also are working on experiments with herbicide use with Dr. Chris McDonald from UC Cooperative Extension. So this habitat type doesn't have a lot of research on how to restore it. And so Dr. Chris McDonald is helping us to see which different herbicide treatments can decrease the weeds and help restore it to the original sand dune species makeup that it should be. So we have some different properties where we're working on that. Come on. Sorry, this presentation is lagging a little bit. All right, and then we also do this sort of simulated sand disturbance. So like I was saying, these sand dunes that are kind of a really dynamic habitat that should have a lot of wind disturbance just naturally occurring. A lot of them aren't getting that same wind disturbance because of invasive species that are slowing the wind speed. And so basically, this method is kind of come up with by Jonathan Reinig from Western Riverside County Parks. He helped us make a harrow or a drag tool that we use on the back of a different like off-road vehicle. Right here in this slide, we have this Toro Sand Pro, it's called. So we got donated from Toro. And it's basically a golf bunker maintenance tool that's used to maintain sand traps. And we take this tool that was meant to play in the sand, and we attach either the harrow, which you can see back there that came with the machine, the small little tool on there. Or we also found that using a drag made out of an old piece of chain link fence weighted down with some tires or some pallets, we drag that around and basically disturb up the soil. And after we do that, the invasive species don't really like to grow back in that loose sandy soil. They kind of like it more stabilized. And so we'll disturb it all up. We'll throw some buckwheat seeds in there. And then after a couple months, you'll see, I think about 10 months later, we took this picture. And it's just some buckwheat grown with minimal invasive species. So so that's working on some small areas we're experimenting on. and we're hoping to kind of increase that to larger swaths as we learn more about what works and what doesn't. Another thing that actually they're working on at Vulcan Conservation Bank is goat grazing. I actually think they're using sheep grazing. And it looks like it's going well over there. The area after it's grazed is very low growing. At least the burrowing owl will like it for sure. I'm not sure the current results on recolonization. So I'm not sure if it's decreasing the amount of recolonization year after year, but I think they've been doing it for the past 2 years. So over time, I think we'll figure out whether or not it's a useful tool. Sand sourcing is another thing that we're hoping to do. So when we have those erosional issues and that sand flows off site somehow, we're hoping that we can replace that sand with another source. Again, the species, as far as we know, need the specific sand, the soil type to live in, but we're hoping we can find alternative soils that maybe won't negatively impact these endangered species. So we're looking into different options. All right, and then we're doing a lot of collaboration education. So like I said earlier in this presentation, but for those who missed it, I often give this presentation to different high schools in the local area. So we've worked with high schools in Colton, Rialto, and Fontana, talking to students about kind of what we do, trying to engage them in our volunteer programs because we want a community-based volunteer effort. We want people to be invested in restoring the habitats around them and in their community. So we also work with Inland Empire Resource Conservation District and Edison International, who like I said, are sponsors for this program. They give us grant funding to do these educational and volunteer programs. Like I said, we also work with UC Cooperative Extension on the herbicide experimentation. City of Colton and Fontana, we have conservation easements in those cities, and we work with the city planning to work on these conservation easements. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, of course, Regional Conservation Authority. Like I said, we have a conservation easement next to theirs, and they've done a lot of work on figuring out how to manage the Delhi sand dune habitat. So we learn a lot from them and work with them a lot. And then we recently started working with California CSU San Bernardino a lot with their students and teaching some programs there and engaging their students on a lot of volunteer work with us. And they've been super great partners this past year. And then Urban Conservation Corps is an awesome group. They have this program where they will help us remove tires. So for those that don't know, tires cost a lot to recycle. And so a lot of people will take these tires and dump them on open space properties because they don't want to pay to dispose of them. But Urban Conservation Corps has a program where they will help you remove these tires from open space land for free. I believe they have a grant with a Cow-Recycle to do this. So they've been a great help because we've had piles of like 400 tires dumped on our property before. That would have cost a lot of money to remove, but Urban Conservation Corps helped us do it with basically no cost. So thank you to them and to all these groups for helping us in these programs. And so how can you help as a volunteer? Just want to share some things that you can do to help us as far as volunteering. So we have seed collection work days where we collect all the seed that we're going to use for restoration. We have nursery work days where we grow out the plants for these restoration projects, and as well as other conservation projects we have besides the Delhi sand dune habitat. Next slide here, come on. Okay. We have a lot of trash removal, habitat enhancement projects. We do weed removal, planting projects, and trash removal. Here's California Conservation Corps, who I forgot to put on our slide, I think. But they actually helped us remove a ton of dumped concrete at a volunteer event, which was amazing. Just shout out to them as well. All right, we did this a couple years ago. I'm not sure if we'll do these anymore. We have a insect display that we put together, and so we needed some help collecting insects. So we had some volunteers come out and help us do that. We've had a volunteer from Chaffey College, or a volunteer and a part-time staff member we hired from Chaffey College. I think she's on the call, Anais, and David Davalos right here helped us collect and pin all of these insects that we have. I didn't include a picture of the collection because I forgot, but trust me, it looks amazing. And maybe you can see it at one of our outreach events in the future. And so what can you do to help? You can volunteer with us. Definitely like us on social media, follow us on social media to find out when our volunteer events are, when they'll start up again, which may not be till late fall or something. But you can join us during these events. We will also plan to have hikes and other events like that you can join us. You can share this information with others for sure. I always like to tell the students in our presentations that you can become a DSF expert yourself. You can go into the field of entomology if you want, or you could even just go on the Wikipedia page, which I think I mostly wrote everything on there. Maybe like 80% of it I've updated. So as soon as you read the Wikipedia page, you'll know definitely way more than anyone else around you, really, because not a lot of people know about it. And then you can become an RLC member. And so this next slide I want to show you is the stickers that we've had made. We've had one of these stickers made every year over the past couple of years with help of grant funding from IERCD and Edison. And so this year we just had this burrowing owl sticker made. And these are all designed by an artist that mostly designs native plants. Her name's Leslie Gorn. And you should definitely give her a follow. Here's our Instagram down here. But we have a link where you can enter your information so we can send you some of these stickers. We are asking if you can make a donation. You can definitely donate through that form. Please go on there and we'll send you the link at the end and fill out your information so we can send you some stickers. They're awesome. They're strong enough to stay in your water bottle. I had the fly sticker on my car for like 2 years before it came off, so they're pretty great. They're not cheap stickers, so you should definitely fill out that form and try to get some. All right, so thank you. I will open it up to questions now. I will try to answer these questions if I don't think I answered them yet. These are some that people submitted. So favorite plant and animal found in the dunes. I think my favorite animal is definitely the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly. And I think my favorite plant out there is probably croton, just because, I don't know, I like the soft grayish greenish color and I think it smells pretty good. Someone asked about the top invasive species that are out there. I think I answered that. It's mostly some mustards like Sahara mustard, short pod mustard, Russian thistle, which is tumbleweed, and and verbicina, which is golden crownbeard, I think it's the common name. And someone asked a very specific question about the restoration of the old ag field in the Colton Dunes Preserve. And does it successfully support the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly? I don't know if that's a very specific portion of the Colton Dunes, or if you just mean the whole preserve in general. But they're still working on the restoration and weed management mostly in the Colton Dunes, as far as I know. And I know the site does support the fly. So I hope that answers that question. And someone asked, can habitat be restored if it's been developed? I can't think of a situation where that might happen, but if say there was just a parking lot and that was it on a property, and then that parking lot was removed, and then you tried to restore the sand under it. I'm not sure like how many different, like I don't know how easily it would be to take everything that was on top of it out of there and then still have like intact good sand underneath. And for sure I don't think it would have any more anything really living in it. So if it was restored and somehow you can get everything out of that sand, then I think it would have to be recolonized with native plants and with insects and stuff like that. So maybe. And then I had one more slide with questions that stumped me. Someone asked how climate change is affecting the Delhi sand dunes. That's a question I don't know the answer to. How long have they been around? I am not, I don't know. I don't know how long, like historically, they've been kind of in there. What's the difference between granite-based sand and other types of sand? And is glamis the same? Like I said, glamis has taller sand dunes because of the different soil type. I think it has to do with the size of the grains. But it's also granite-based sand, so I don't know. But there's also a mix of other granite. There's a mix of other sands called, I have it written down here, called Carcetus and Rositas sand. I'm not a geologist and I don't really know the difference. So I wish I could tell you, but it's something I'm gonna have to learn somewhere along the way. And someone asked about the ethnobotany of the dunes. I don't know entirely like which plants out there. For those that don't know, ethnobotany is, I think, basically means like human interaction with plants. And so it usually refers to like what they're used for medicinally or for food. Again, I don't know a lot about these plants and how they can be used for food or medicine.
And Michael, we have a question. Do local conservation agencies ever hold job fairs for those interested in entering the career field? And how useful is a library and information science background to conservation agencies?
So the first part of that question about the job, hold on, I'm gonna end my share here so I can see more people. Stop share.
You're up.
Okay, cool. All right, so sorry, the first part of that question, hold on, my thing's freaking out a little bit. Okay, the first part of that question you asked was about job fairs. Nicole, if you can hear me right now, do you know any more about that? Because since I've been working here, I haven't seen anything about job fairs, so. Oh, I don't know, she nodded, but I don't know if she's nodding at me or not.
She's working on unmuting. It's complicated.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry, I was sending links to Rebecca. There's several agencies. There's a national land trust organization called the Land Trust Alliance where you can search for job opportunities. There's also California-based California Council of Land Trusts, which also lists job opportunities in conservation. Both of these groups are largely centered around land trusts, but they do post jobs for other conservation type organizations.
Cool.
We'll give you the link.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And then the second part of that question was about using, I think it was like using libraries as a resource.
How useful is a library and information science background to conservation agencies?
Oh, I honestly don't know much about that field of education. I do know that during this presentation, I was like, I wish I should probably go to libraries more often to find out a lot of this information because I was like, I really wanted to know more about, so I looked up the Native American land use of this area, and I found that this area was mostly Tongva land, but I don't know the, it's a Tongva territory, but I don't know the really the interaction with the landscape or, so I was kind of more interested in learning about that. And then I lacked the geological background, so I wanted to learn more about that. And it was really hard to look up like different stuff. So I just think in general, maybe that background would be helpful. I don't know. That's as best as answer as I can give, really. Hopefully that helps. I haven't opened this chat at all, so I'm going to open it real quick.
I think that's it for the questions in the chat box at the moment. If anybody else has a quick
Let's see,
question.
does RLC ever visit schools to educate kids about at-risk species? We do visit schools. We visit mostly high schools in the areas. Well, we visit schools based on the programs that we're giving. And so the program, the Delhi Sand Dunes Community Conservation Program, which surrounds the Delhi Sand Dunes, we focus on the areas around that habitat type. So like I said, we mostly visit schools in Fontana, Colton, Ontario, and Rialto. And then we have another program called Acorns to Oaks out in like Calamasa Banning area, or Beaumont. And so we go to a Beaumont High School, no, sorry, Banning High School to do a program there. Mostly high schools. We haven't done any like middle school or elementary school stuff at schools, as far as I know of, at least since I've been working here. All right, I'm looking for other questions here.
Sorry, I missed that one, but I didn't see any others.
Okay. All right, well, if anyone has any other questions, please ask them. We'll stay on for a little bit so I can make sure I answer anything. Yes, Irene Stewart says that she's a teacher at Hoopa Valley High School and said that I came to the school to give a presentation. I hope you'll be able to visit again soon. I would love to have my students involved. Yes, I do remember you, and I saw when you registered, and I was like very thankful that you registered. Part of me was wondering if you were gonna force your summer school students to watch this or something. But yes, thank you for watching, and I would love to go back as soon as we're able to commence regular learning again. Do you collaborate with any other restoration groups? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is my friend Matt from college, and I saw him join later on. I don't know if he saw the collaboration slide, so I'm just going to scroll back to that one. But yeah, we collaborate with the California Conservation Corps, like in this photo right here. We collaborate with Inland Empire Resource Conservation District. Nicole said we work with SAWA, which is Santa Ana Watershed Association. We've worked with CMPS recently on a project at Ryan Bonamino Park. Still scrolling here. Like I said, we collaborate with Western Riverside Regional Conservation Authority because they've done a lot with Delhi sand dune restoration. So we work with them a lot on trying to figure out what to do. We also work with Ken Osborne a lot, who's a entomologist that does our fly surveys for us. And he is just an expert on the fly and knows a lot about the habitat that they live in. So he helps us kind of figure out which direction to go and when we're considering different fly management. All right, I'm gonna also share this. Exit full screen. I'll share these links here at the end. Wow, I can't believe I kind of fit all that in under an hour. Oh shoot, this is to everyone.
I also shared the links to the sticker and to your map, Michael. So
oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, I shared them again at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, we're not alone for sure out here. There's plenty of different groups we work with, and we have a lot of volunteers that we work with. Plenty of which are on this call, I think. All right. Any other questions?
If we offer internships.
Does RLC ever offer internships? As long as I've been here, we haven't, I don't think. We had a like part-time position that opened up, like a part-time paid position that we had open up just from grant funding that we've had. I guess, which were kind of like an internship. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. So sometimes we have part-time job opportunities open. We also have some kind of like really dedicated volunteers that end up working a lot with us that gain experience in that way. So if you're looking to do above and beyond volunteer work, definitely contact us and we can help get you to work in some way. We've made a lot of friends that way, and I think we've definitely helped a lot of people get jobs that way, especially over the past like 2 years, I think. All right, any other questions? And again, I'm going to be posting, probably sending a follow-up email to everyone with some of these links again, a link to the video that we'll put up somewhere when we figure that out. But yeah, definitely go check out that sticker order form. What would be a good contact to ask about volunteering? You could ask me. I'll type my email in there again, and again, I'll send an email to you all, so you'll get that as well. All right. Any more questions? All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess I'll log off here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone,
for
for
coming.
joining us.
Look out for my follow-up email. Really want to send you some of these stickers. I have them here. Check them out. All right, bye.